It was typical of Beethoven's boldness, and he got his way. By now, Beethoven had come to the attention of Bonn's rulers, and through them was given his first big musical break. He was chosen to write the music for a cantata commemorating the death of Joseph II, the popular and modernizing Habsburg emperor who had embodied the ideals of the French Enlightenment.
Close to the French border, Bonn had always been influenced by French Enlightenment thought. And the young Beethoven also found himself drawn to its values of virtue, reason, freedom, and progress. Here, as an idealistic and demanding young man, he penned this sublime tune, almost Mozartian in its effortless beauty. This soaring line, mankind climbs towards the light, has been called Beethoven's melody of humanity, and its shape, its melodic contour, we'll hear again and again in other works. What does it consist of? A rising figure, and up again, and then it turns back in on itself. So it's about an overall shape, not the specific notes, which makes it a motto theme, which is an ongoing obsession in Beethoven's music throughout his life.
No, stop! Stop! Unless my ears deceive me, you are playing flat. The whole of the last phrase was flat. Again, from the beginning.
The work was rehearsed but never performed in Beethoven's lifetime. It's an ambitious, elaborate piece, and at 800 bars, longer than anything he'd written before. The cantata was commissioned at a turning point in European history, and it's the first time we see Beethoven dealing with political ideas.
The storming of the Bastille in France had sent shockwaves throughout the continent.
And here, Beethoven seems to bid farewell to Europe's past by giving this work an image of an idealized
Golden age of aristocratic heroism, just as so much of Europe is on the brink of devastating revolution.
Beethoven had attained recognition in Bonn's aristocratic circles. It was now time for him to seek a wider horizon.
His life in Bonn could only take him so far. He was well aware of that. And he had so much more to learn in Vienna. But he knew not to rely on anyone. That much he'd learned from his childhood.
It's hard to say goodbye.
It's something I know you have to do. But if only it weren't such a long way away. Eleonora would like to say goodbye.
I'm late. I'm sorry.
Please don't be angry with her.
I wasn't able to return his love. And, in his usual way, he was angry with me for it. But he wrote to me from Vienna, and slowly we were able to be friends again.
At the age of 21, Beethoven left Bonn behind him and set off to seek his fortune in Vienna, the musical capital of Europe. He arrived with an invitation to study with the world's greatest living composer, Joseph Haydn.
Haydn. So pleased to meet you. Welcome to Vienna. How are you getting on? Oh, come, sit down over here. Over there. Now, I was shown a manuscript of your cantata when I visited Bonn. Yes, your patron, Waldstein? Yeah. He told me you were brilliant. Yes, he said, with a lot of hard work, you shall receive Mozart's spirit through the hands of Haydn. And what do you make of that, then?
Well, I would be honored to study with you, Herr Haydn, but you know better than I do that every true artist must find his own path.
Of course. An extraordinary young man. I wasn't surprised at his impatience. After all, I suppose this was a young man in a hurry, and I was a composer in my twilight years. But I sensed that in time he would give the world something to talk about, and I would be proud to call myself his teacher.
Soon after he arrived in Vienna, our father died. I wrote to tell Ludwig, but he didn't come back for the funeral. In fact, he never returned to Bonn. I was more than happy to follow him to Vienna. There was nothing in Bonn for me. I suppose, in a way, I was living in his shadow. Soon after he arrived in Vienna, Our father died. I wrote to tell Ludwig, but he didn't come back for the funeral. In fact, he never returned to Bonn. I was more than happy to follow him to Vienna. There was nothing in Bonn for me. I suppose, in a way, I was living in his shadow. Ludwig got on with his life. His new life.
The death of his father meant that Beethoven could finally put his childhood behind him. Before long, he was being feted in the salons of the Viennese nobility as the city's most exciting newcomer. Nothing could hold him back.
So what do you think? It's ingenious, it's novel, and I like it because of its novelty. Others may find it too complex. If I were you, I wouldn't publish this last one just yet. It needs more work. What's wrong with it? No, nothing's wrong with it. I simply meant that this is a complicated work. Perhaps a little too much so. The public hasn't caught up with you yet. Perhaps they're not quite ready for this. It was a little embarrassing, to say the least. All I meant to say was that the public may not take so readily to such a difficult and stormy finale. But the work was outstanding. It made me proud. And I asked him later if he would put Pupil of Haydn on the piece. It's a normal practice, but not for Beethoven. He refused outright.
Perhaps it was necessary for the young composer to carve his own way. He needed to make his work distinct from that of his contemporaries or teachers, like Haydn.
And he does that here in the F minor piano sonata.
Setting himself challenging ground rules in order to express the maximum. Whereas composers like Haydn and Mozart might achieve contrast through key change, Beethoven here sticks pretty much to the one key, F minor. And he forces us to sit up and listen through the use of very clever localized effects. Repetition, strange syncopated rhythms, and extreme shifts between loud and soft. He's taken the idea of contrast to a much higher, more provocative degree.